Well, Michelle Grattan, good morning.
Good morning.
Unusually, I guess, for us, there is a breaking story at the moment. I understand that within the last hour or so, the government has said that it would not approve the sale of GrainCorp. And we obviously know that the Nationals were opposed to the sale. Talk me through it. What do you think's really happened?
Well, Joe Hockey, who had a press conference before the markets opened here or in the United States, so that's why it was so early, said that the Foreign Investment Review Board had been divided on this issue. As we know, it's been a very hot topic for some time. The Nationals have been feral indeed about it, and Deputy Prime Minister Warren Truss, leader of the Nationals, was out again yesterday saying that the sweetener, which was offered at the last moment by ADM, the American company which was trying to buy GrainCorp, would not impress the farmers. The 200 million extra investment, he said they weren't going to be dazzled by that, essentially was his message. Joe Hockey had given himself until December 17 to make a decision, but he clearly felt that he might as well get this out of the way because nothing much was going to change, except there were going to be hearings next week by a Senate committee. So that would have just put the issue even more up in lights, led to more controversy. Joe Hockey basically argued that firstly, the Foreign Investment Review Board was divided on the question of whether this was against the national interest. Secondly, he believed that to approve the bid would endanger public support for foreign investment, and that would be a negative. So he's come to this decision, probably reluctantly, but in the end, I guess, not surprisingly.
Well, Tony Abbott came to power declaring that the country was now open for business. GrainCorp was a very successful company, so is it only open for not very good businesses?
Joe Hockey made the point that he'd looked at some 131 foreign investment bids, that this was the only one that had been rejected. It does send out a negative message, there's no doubt about that, but the point is that to go the other way would have been very costly for the government in terms of its internal harmony, and also this is just one bid, so I don't think it negates the message of being open for business, but it does blur it a bit. Certainly the economic dries in the Liberal Party will not be pleased, will think it's the tail wagging the dog in the guise of the National Party, but if it had gone the other way, I think the noise would have been much greater. It'll be interesting to see what Labor says, because Labor has been pretty relaxed about this bid.
Well, also happening around about now this morning, the Education Ministers are meeting in Sydney. In your Grattan on Friday column in The Conversation, you are, if I may say so, quite feisty. You have said that David Gonski and members of his panel on school funding, who included Catherine Greiner and Carmen Lawrence, have every reason to feel appalled at the way their work has been treated and trashed by both sides of politics. You say that Labor mishandled the issue, and we might come back to that, but in relation to the government, you say now we have duplicity of the new government. Could you expand on that?
Well, the government, when in opposition, did say that it was on a unity ticket with Labor for the first 4 years of the Gonski Plan, not the whole 6, but the first 4, and that there would be no difference in funding. It would remove some of what it called the command and control aspects, the conditions that Labor wanted to impose on the states. Then it discovered when the mid-year or the pre-election economic forecast came out that more than $1 billion of Gonski money wasn't there because various states hadn't signed up. It didn't make any huge fuss about this beyond noting it, but it did still say it would provide all the $2.8 billion in funding for the period. Now Christopher Pyne says, oh, the PFO showed that this money was missing, Therefore, the funding envelope that Labor proposed had shrunk, and that's now the envelope we're talking about. Moreover, he says that the government will rework the later years of Gonski. They'll provide the funding for next year, but then they'll rework the later years. He has thrown in $230 million for the non-participating states, those who didn't sign up. So we have a change in the funding plan. We also have total uncertainty for the later years built in when there was supposed to be certainty. The government, then opposition, knew before the election what the situation was, and yet it let people think it was still on that unity ticket.
I'm wondering what's going to be left in the minds of voters after all of this. They're not going to remember PFO, they're not going to remember years 4, 5 and 6 or the non-signatory states, but might they remember something, that something was not delivered as promised?
I think they will, and the coalition made a lot of the whole matter of trust. I think that voters will certainly recall that. The government is now under strong attack from sister states, coalition states, Victoria and New South Wales. New South Wales has been particularly strong on the matter, and I think that the messages this sends out are very bad messages for the government in its early days.
So can I develop that, because you finish your article talking about tone, and you've just mentioned messages. You say that Abbott has said that ministers have to be careful of tone. You've referred to Scott Morrison having to adjust an unfortunate tone, and that Christopher Pyne is showing signs of bad tone. When they were in opposition, there was that period where there was much discussion about a negative tone. Do you think this is going to mount as a perception in the public? Could the early opinion polls even be picking it up now?
Well, certainly the polls we've seen this week have not been very good for the government. One was negative and the other one showed its support falling back. Tony Abbott has been pretty careful with his own tone, but I think Christopher Pyne in the last few days has had the tone almost of someone who said, got you. I've spotted a way out. I've found an escape hatch. We've never really liked this plan. We had to sign up to it before the election. These are the vibes coming, not what he's actually saying. But now we've found a way of going back to where we were before. Well, I don't think voters like being treated like that. It reinforces their views of politicians. It's interesting that in the Eden Monero study that we did, the University of Canberra did, right at the end of that, the online focus group was saying they didn't believe promises would be delivered whoever won the election. Well, in terms of Gonski, they were absolutely spot on.
Well, Michelle Grattan, I hope your mood lightens during the day, and I look forward to talking to you again next Friday.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.